Okay, hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Getting There, eSchool news conversations with school district executives and how they're responding to the pandemic. My name is Kevin Hogan. I'm editor at large for eSchool News, and I'm glad you found us here. With me today is Bryan Phillips. Bryan Phillips became the Chief Technology Officer for Hoover City Schools in Alabama in 2010. As CTO, he provides visionary leadership and has the ability to articulate that vision in all areas of technology. He successfully leads a team of network administrators, technology integrationists, and technicians in support of the district's Engaged Learning Initiative, which I'm going to ask Bryan to describe for us quite shortly. In addition to his job as CTO, Bryan serves as president for the state's Technology Coordinators Organization, Alabama Leaders in Educational Technology. He was named as the recipient of the organization's Making IT Happen in 2016, and that award recognizes motivating leaders that move forward without looking back. Bryan is also a COSN CETL, which is a Certified Education Technology Leader, and is also a longtime collaborator and advisor for the work that we used to do at Tech and Learning, and was an attendee and panelist and speaker sharing best practices at many events back when we used to be able to meet in person, Bryan, right? Do you remember those days?
I do remember those days. I miss them.
Yeah, I call that the BP, before pandemic. But before we get into this, maybe tell us a little bit about your district, where you are in the country. I know you have a really progressive take when it comes to using technology, and I suspect that a lot of the things that happens here, you might even have a guilty pleasure that, like, not that you've been waiting for this particular moment, but waiting for this opportunity to kind of put all these technologies and techniques into practice.
Yeah, we're Hoover City Schools. We're outside of Birmingham, Alabama. So we're the jumping point outside Birmingham. We call it over the mountain. It's where all the districts have moved, basically, that are not the big, huge districts. We're 14,000 kids. Historically, we're down to about 13,250 this year. We're down a little bit because a lot of kids are staying home or went elsewhere. We have been a one-to-one district for 7 or 8 years now. 8 years now. Totally enjoy what we do. And to your point, we've been trying to get to this point for 20 years. I just didn't expect it to happen on March 13th overnight and everybody be full blown the way we are now.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that. Now, you had a one-to-one program already in place, right? So it wasn't that you were...
Third grade through 12th grade, and now we've moved down to kindergarten.
Okay. How did it scale? I mean, how did it... was it something that you feel like you went through and was business as usual, or?
Yeah, as far as that, our big problem was connectivity more than the devices themselves. We had a lot of kids who did depend on us for connectivity, so meeting those needs turned into a problem. But we met that need, I think, in most cases. I do think, where we were was very beneficial. We had a great deal of our teachers who were where we wanted them to be. We had more teachers who needed a little bit of encouragement and through those first couple of weeks, and we supported them where we could. And I think we moved pretty well. We continue moving forward. We did not just, put the brakes on and let everybody stay at home and do anything. We pushed through and finished the what we call the core standards through the rest of the school year and did grades and everything. So we're really lucky there.
Talk a little bit about your situation now. Are you in person, remote, hybrid?
So we started off a virtual, and then we did a mix. So we did a mix, staggered alphabet A through M, I think, and N through Z. A through M Monday, Thursday, N through Z Tuesday, Friday. Wednesdays were a virtual day. Everybody was completely virtual. We're still at about 1/3 of our kids decided to stay home and do a virtual learning. My son's one of those. And it's been a good fit for us. So we've been able to socially distance, we've been able to use our mask. We've had a couple of flare-ups here and there, but nothing that we couldn't control. We haven't had to completely close a building down since we started. So that's been a plus.
How about, you were talking a little bit about some teacher resistance at the beginning. It's, again, another one of those conversations that over the years we've talked about professional development and the thwatties, right? That chemistry teacher where they've taught chemistry for 35 years and that's the way we're always going to do it. How did you manage that? I mean, I guess again, it's another advantage of there is no choice, right?
Yeah, but that was what was great was we had a staff in place. Kelly Lanes, our instructional leader, instructional technology coordinator, who works along with me. She had a team of coaches, and we literally went to meet them where they're at. What do they need? Ask what is your needs right now? What is the needs assessment for this group? Of course, Meet. We use Meet because we're a big Google district. That was the number one was get the PD for it, make sure they understand that. Then working with Google to kind of get the tools needed. To pick up the holes they had and then reteach what we needed to teach and teach kids and teach parents. I mean, that was one thing that I had never thought of before was we opened our help desk up to outside versus just inside. So we went from working on just, our network, our devices to their network, their devices. How do you do this on a router? How do you lock this down? It was and then those questions turned into how do I do number 9 on a math test? It was a whole different section that we had never thought of technically. So that was a big push, but it was fun. I mean, it taught the guys on the technical side why they're doing what they're doing. And
Yeah.
it gave a little bit of a glimpse into that.
Certainly, as I sit here as a parent, I've noticed the dynamic change greatly between my interaction with my kids' guidance counselors and with individual teachers and through back to school. Maybe you could talk a little bit. Have you noticed that same sort of dynamic shift?
Yeah, I'll tell you one that's really cool. We have a student who is at one of our elementary schools. I think she's in a 4th or 5th grade. She's staying with her grandparents because her mother and father both work in the medical field. So she's staying with her grandparents every day. And the granddad called the help desk every day, like at 2:00 and had questions. And it was like every day we had this one great coach who dealt with him every day because she could talk to him and get on his level. And it turned into almost a joke that they had a date every day, but it was awesome seeing how she could work with those grandparents,
Yeah.
and get everything done that the kid needed to do. And it showed everybody in the building that, we are all in this together. We're all fighting the same problems. We're all dealing with the same stuff. So it was fun. We have a lot of parents who call and are upset. We're doing too much technical, we should be doing books and, I should not be forced to make my kid learn this way and they need to go to school and a lot of those questions. But I mean, we just answer, look, that's not our problem. Our problem is to actually help your kid where we can and do what we can for your kid. And if we want to talk about that, we will. If not, here's a phone number to call and complain to someone else.
Right.
I mean, you have to.
Right. What talk a little bit about your summer, the transitions that you did in order to prepare. I mean, I'm sure you had a lot of beach time, right? A lot of
Yeah. So a lot of it was not. I mean, most of it was on the instructional side. Most of it we were supposed to. The state of Alabama is changing our student information system currently. We were supposed to implement that the first day of school this year. So we were between two systems trying to figure out what that was going to happen, not happen. The worldwide need for devices took a problem. Supply chains took a hit. A lot of pieces there. I will say we didn't take a lot of time off in the summer, but it almost was rebuild the ship every day because you would do something and something would change and you'd have to go back to the drawing board, figure out what it is, and move forward. I felt like we did a lot of planning. But the planning paid off. I mean, I can say that, but it felt like that's all we were. It didn't feel like we were moving forward. We were just rebuilding every day, but it paid off. So can't complain.
Yeah. Yeah. How about talk a little bit about the use of, well, in your case, Google Meet and that synchronous aspect of the instruction, right? So, I mean, so the spring was total, I'll date myself here, but total Brady Bunch where everybody's in the square. But now you're saying the teacher's kind of back in the classroom.
Yeah.
Have you changed technologies there or have you changed dynamics in terms of that communication?
No, it's been really cool. So that's one of those things that I think moving forward we'll do better. A lot of teachers are still running Meet every day and recording their lesson and keeping it. So the kids that aren't there, they can just send it to them or post it in the classroom or whatever else. So it's turned into that. I mean, you hate to say it, but it's a vlog. It's a video diary of what they do every day, and it's keeping those lesson plans. I think that's a plus. Not every teacher's doing that, don't get me wrong, but a lot of teachers are. And a lot of a lot of the advanced courses, we don't have a teacher for both physical and virtual. So, if there's small number of courses, that teacher's doing both physical and virtual. So she may have office hours on Tuesdays with the kids to come in and ask questions, which I think will be a huge plus moving forward if we move to that. I mean, some kids may not feel comfortable walking up to a teacher or calling a teacher over their desk in class and asking a question. But if they can go back and at 4 o'clock send a teacher, hey, I need to talk to you, they get on a meet and work that out and learn whatever that concept is, that's a plus. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something in college we learned the hard way was, you get a bad grade on a test and you have to go back in and go, okay, look, what did I miss here? Well, kids are now learning it in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade to do that. So I think it's a plus moving forward. And we all know we Google every question we have. So
Right.
They're doing the same thing.
Right. Yeah, there is a strange intimacy in this sort of communication, right? I mean, even I'll go back to talking with the guidance counselors. I mean, as a parent, that can be awkward, right? I mean, especially if you're going into the guidance counselor's office, there's a power dynamic. There's all these sort of things. There's a time element to it all. But now with this click in, click out, you have a question. And in other conversations I've had with wellness, in terms of social emotional learning, and even mental health, where kids are getting, interacting with mental health workers, as we all should be now, that it's easier for them to talk this way than if they were in an office, right?
They were talking this way anyway, kids were. Kids were doing this before anyway, with Twitch and, you go through all the different platforms they play on and everything. They do this anyway. So for them, it wasn't that big of a stretch. I had to call a teledoc a few weeks ago. I had a sinus infection, blah, blah, blah. That was a whole new interaction for me I had never done.
Yeah.
But I can see how, your mental health piece of this, we're seeing each other. We see the conversation. We see facial expressions. If I'm lying to you, just like if you were lying to a doctor or anybody else at that point. So I think it's one of those that we'll move forward with, and it's not for everybody. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But I think it will allow. My son made a great point. He said he basically learns how to be a freshman in college as a freshman in high school now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's getting that ahead of time.
Any other innovations come to mind when, as a long-term technology evangelist, but like in May, where you were kind of like, we kind of should have been doing this all along?
I mean, I think the virtual office hours is a huge one. Of cloud, of course, everything being in the cloud, not tied to our network, not tied to anywhere specific. I mean, when COVID went into full mode, full lockdown, we had kids who were no longer in Hoover that had went to stay with grandparents in other states or wherever else. So I start looking at IP addresses of where our Chromebooks, I mean, they're all over the US. So I think that showing the remoteness of it all was a plus, to show that our kids can still learn from our teachers, but be anywhere. That was a plus. Virtual meetings. So, faculty meetings that used to last 2 hours now last 15 minutes because you got a bulleted list, you run through it, you're done. All that unneeded conversation is not there because adults don't do well in this platform. They want to get through the points and get out. And just the flexibility. I mean, that, it's not actual technology. It's actually the skills you're learning more than anything else. The flexibility of being able to go from one thing to the other, from, a true virtual student, maybe at work with their mom and dad during school hours, but at 4:30, they come in and work from 4:30 to 8. The flexibility there is huge. I mean, we all know, in college, we may have worked one job, 2 jobs, whatever else, and our hours fluctuated when we studied. We may study at 2 a.m. We have some of our kids do that. That flexibility is huge. And the teacher's flexibility to grade different, to grade in a different way, not to look at, multiple choice tests with number C. That's huge. The grading flexibility is huge. Those are big ones that come to mind. I mean, I really do think it is an opportunity for, I've said this for years, a Chromebook or any piece of technology does not make a teacher great. It takes a good teacher and makes them better. This is the same thing. It's taking good teachers and making them a lot better. Flip side of that is it can take a bad teacher and make them look horrible. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to have those conversations. I do think teachers who want to teach and are teaching for the right reason can use this experience and grow, which I mean is what the point of all this anyway, is how do we make our kids better? I don't think our kids will ever go back to straight rows and doing the same thing from 8 to 3 every day. And I hope they don't. I mean, that model was built for an industrial system where we're not teaching kids to go work in factories the same way anymore. And factories have changed a little bit. That need is still there, but even those kids in our district are learning in a different way. They're meeting virtual with people who are on the assembly lines. They're looking at what those jobs look like. They do have labs where they go in and pick up a hammer, don't get me wrong, but that's different now too. Even as an adult, if you take a job in one of those fields, you're not being an apprentice as long as you used to be when you're a plumber apprentice or a journeyman or whatever else. You're getting a lot of that learned virtual moving forward, everything else. I think that's a plus.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting you talk about going back to normal. This is the first conversation I'm having since the announcement of the possibility of a vaccine, which obviously is fantastic news. And even better is like the timeline, if that all goes according to plan, is that really next fall, best case scenario is we could technically go back to normal and go back to those rows. Have we been through this long enough to now realize that a lot of these techniques should stick? And I guess I'll ask you to answer that question first within the context of your own district, and then kind of a bigger picture.
Yeah, we've had that conversation. We will always offer virtual moving forward. We've decided that. We had a virtual option 9 through 12 for the past 5-6 years. It was in our board policy, and we had several kids who took benefit of certain courses virtually. So they, were an athlete, and this class was taught while they were supposed to be meeting for this athletic. So they did it virtually. I think moving forward, it's a plus. I mean, everything we've learned will be a positive. We will, as Hoover, offer that moving forward. We had a conversation, it's probably 2 weeks ago, that we'll put that as an offering. We're actually, the week after Thanksgiving, sending a survey out to parents to see how they feel about that and where they want to stand and how many, are we going to have enough to staff that? Will we have enough kids to actually pick that to staff that? That's a piece of this that, this summer, that was a lot of the planning was, how do you staff a virtual school now and a physical school? Where those units come from, how are they funded? I think we learned a lot, though, and I think we will do that moving forward.
And it will be something that will be separate. I mean, in the course of the day-to-day, it's not like they're going to be beaming in to watch a live broadcast of Mrs. Jones or.
Yeah. So we will be separate. Again, some of those courses, because the numbers, they may be both physical and virtual. So, if you're taking Latin 2, I don't think there's that many kids who are still into Latin 2. So if you are, those classes will probably be offered both ways, and they can do either or.
Okay.
But yeah, it's going to be a true school. Its own state number and everything.
Okay. Let's go back to the assessment piece of this. You're the first district I've heard that actually did traditional assessment in the spring. So congratulations. Not so many did. But at the same time, you also watch the type of traditional assessment for getting kids into college, the SAT and ACT basically implode upon itself. Do you see any of these technologies replacing traditional assessment? And you can even talk about maybe like micro credentials or badging and using video as a digital portfolio.
I think a lot of, with the colleges not worrying about that this year, that will teach them a lot. The change will have to happen there. It won't happen with us.
Yeah.
It'll be what they accept and what they don't accept. I think with, big companies, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, in our world, and you can get into, any banking company and other thing with those, when they stop looking for a degree, that will change. From the time my son was 4, he said he was going on Shark Tank. So I hope he has that opportunity to work through at his own pace and do his own thing and not have to worry about a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And I hope that's the case.
Yeah. Any other things, you were talking about the virtual school being something that will now be a standard for your district. Do you have a checklist of other things that, say, next September, and we're back to school, that you'd like to see remain in place, AP, after pandemic?
Yeah, we had held off on K1 to having a device because we still wanted the physical, tactile learn the motor skills, do the things. They had a set of devices in their class they could use, but each kid didn't have their device. I think moving forward, we'll stay there. We'll do that and have that available, because you have so many kids now who attend a preschool or whatever else who come in who have that. I mean, we all know 2 and 3 year olds pick up a phone and they swipe, do everything on the phone now because it's second nature to them. I think moving forward, that's a plus, and having those will be a plus. And I'm not saying it's needed for every kid, but if you have a kid who is who is bored in class, and you can give them something to push them a little further, let them do a little bit more. That's not the flip side of that is if you have a kid, you're working on, constant sounds with this kid in kindergarten, first, second grade, and they can't get it. You can give them remedial stuff and just drill them and get it picked up. So I think it's almost, you can go either way. It extends. So the idea of our Engaged Learning Initiative was to engage them more than we were engaging them from 8 to 3. That was the whole idea. So to engage them at home, to engage them wherever we could, to extend that day to give them more time actually learning. That's the whole idea. We want to do the same thing. We know, if you look at any study and you look at any of the numbers, kids who have more opportunities learn more. So if we can give every kid the same amount of advanced opportunities than what we had, we've done our job. So that's what we're trying to do.
And in terms of that's something that you could achieve, whether that's in person or hybrid or remote, right?
Give them more opportunities.
Yeah. In terms of the hard tech of learning spaces within your buildings and your districts, are there going to be any differences, AP, after pandemic?
I don't know. We have done in our small kids, K1 to, I think all the way to 4th and 5th grade in some buildings, we've done the clear plexiglass dividers on desk and stuff. It will depend on that. I mean, you look at how the rest of the world has dealt with things like this, prior to today. I think we'll follow their lead in a lot of ways. I think with President-elect Biden, asking for masks to be everywhere. I mean, the state of Alabama has been mandated for months. I think that will stay in place as long as it needs to stay in place. I do hope that we pay attention more to personal hygiene and things like that moving forward. When you look at, how many dispensers we have in the hallways now and things like that, I think that will be a plus moving forward. The number of gatherings, for PTA events and things like that, I think that'll change some. But the flip side of it is you want some normalcy. You want Friday night football games, and you want,
of course,
things like that. So it'll be a happy balance, I hope, moving forward.
How about in terms of the use of your one-to-one program? Where maybe before the pandemic, everybody had their tablet, or you talk about it. I mean, what was the setup before, and how do you see that setup changing, if at all? Maybe you don't.
Yeah, 3 through 12 has been it's the kid gets the device in 3rd grade and it's theirs. They can take it home 365 days a year. It's theirs. Then we flip it out every 4 or 5 years, depending on breakages and things. I will tell you, rough guess, 75% of our teachers use the device with the kids 3 times a week. I think moving forward, that number will be 80, 90% of our teachers 75% of the week, because a lot of them have learned they can extend it. They can ask questions they've never asked before. We often say that, the teacher was the most important thing. They still are the most important thing, don't get me wrong, but they were the purveyor of knowledge. They spouted that out, prior to going one-to-one. When we went one-to-one, they're no longer the smartest person in the room. The collective internet is the smartest person in the room. So that was a big learning point for our teachers. Our teachers, when they realized, okay, we got to ask questions we've never asked before and look for different answers that we've never asked before, because the normal question and answer, they can answer 10 seconds with a type. So I think that will be a big push. I think with our K1-2, we're not letting them take them back and forth just because of size, and we can't fix that many, I'm sure, with little kids carrying them around. But I think the availability of every kid in a class having a device will be plus. I also think, just the tools we're using and teaching them the skill set, if they learn how to do a Google Meet now in kindergarten, 1st grade, and they're singing music, having their music class and their art class and a meet, how does that relate back to home when they want to talk to their grandparents now, all over the world, or their family? Or I think you're teaching skills, you're actually teaching 21st century skills in a real world setting, not just as a skill.
Yeah,
You're teaching how to use it. So I think that's a plus.
that's great. Well, Bryan, we could go on. There's so many different things, but this has really been insightful, and I appreciate your time that you spent with me to talk about these things. And as with all these conversations, I come away with kind of a positive attitude. So if nothing else, it's good therapy for me. So thanks.
Kevin, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
And thanks everybody for watching and reading. And I hope you come back to another episode soon.